On today's ChurchTechCast Q&A show, mobile control, no computer, and why are so many churches using Apple TVs? Hi everyone, my name is Paul Allen Clifford and I'm your host, and I'd love for you to join the conversation. This show is all about your questions and the answers to them. If I don't know the answer, which I don't know everything, I don't even come close to knowing everything. So if you have a question I don't know the answer to, I bet I know somebody that knows it, or I know somebody that knows somebody that knows it. So just feel free to funnel all your church tech questions here, and we will take a look at them. You can absolutely put them underneath the video in the comments, or you can head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact, or hit me up on Twitter, Paul Allen Cliff, PaulAlanClif, and that's a good way to get in touch with me as well. So I was on a webinar earlier this week, and I was asked a few different tech questions, and I thought that I would share those with you, and then we could talk about the results. If you're watching live and you have any questions, don't hesitate to pop on over into the chat room. I've got it over on my primary monitor, and we can talk about those as well. So first off, someone asked how you controlled worship software from your mobile device. And there are really a few different ways to do this. The first one is you can use the remote control app for the worship software. So for example, ProPresenter has a remote control app that's designed for it. It's actually the best way to do this, is to use your smartphone. In this case, I think the ProPresenter app is iOS only, but if you had an iPad or an iPhone or even an iPod Touch, you should be able to control it from that device. And I think that that's probably the best way to do it. But not all worship software has an app. Some worship software actually predates the current generation of smartphones with Android and as well as iOS devices. There may be some Windows Phone apps, but they were like Windows Phone 6 and prior. So there's some still sold worship software right now that predates this. So in that case, how do you control it? Well, you've got still a couple of options. You've got either VNC, which is the virtual network client, which basically enables you to duplicate the screen on your mobile device. This would be better on an iPad or on an Android tablet than it would be on a phone, although perhaps okay on one of the larger phablet size or one of the iPhone 6 Plus size phones, but I just wouldn't want to do it on a smaller phone because it's just, you take a huge screen and squish it down, it becomes difficult. So that's one possibility, is VNC, and that's built into Windows as well as Mac OS X, so whichever of those platforms, and it's definitely built into Linux. So whichever of those platforms should be able to handle a VNC, Virtual Network Client, program that basically duplicates what you see on the desktop just onto your mobile device. So that's one way of doing it. There are also mouse simulator apps that you can download, and basically most of the time they just basically simulate a mouse, but you have to download a little piece of software to do that. And I did that last week with, I have an older version of Keynote that I haven't seen much reason to upgrade to the newer version. And that older version of Keynote didn't support the new app that is the iOS app. So I downloaded this virtual mouse program, threw in the software, and used my iPhone, and it worked perfectly fine. Now the third option is actually the answer to the second question, which someone was in children's ministry, and he said, okay, how do I present from a mobile device? Didn't have a computer, just wanted to present directly from a mobile device. Well, a lot of Android tablets have an HDMI out, and iPhone has an adapter that you can get. iOS devices in general have adapters that you can get, that you can plug into the dock port there on the bottom, and it'll just change it into VGA, DVI, HDMI, whichever one you buy. And then you can plug that directly into your projector or your television. So that's another thing that you can do, is just plug it directly. That bypasses the need for the computer, but you're doing all the heavy lifting on your device, and that also requires that you're plugged in the entire time. So that might be a bit of an issue depending on who you are, etc. If you've got a little bit of budget, a lot of churches are using Apple TVs, and that's our third question as to why churches are using Apple TVs. Either they're using Apple TVs or Chromecasts, and they do very similar things. It's just basically where you're starting from. If you're starting from iOS, an Apple TV gives you a little bit more control. If you're starting from an Android device, a Chromecast might be the way to go. And basically you plug that into a TV or a projector, and then you can send the signal over the network and control it that way. So that's a pretty cool little feature, is the ability to send the video from your mobile device, your tablet, etc., onto a projector or a television. It's going to be a little bit more limited than if you were to use ProPresenter, but I think I'm blanking. Planning Center Online has a presentation app that would work like that, and Proclaim, I think, might also have one. So those are basically the three names in the more mobile way of doing things. So that's what I would suggest if I were you. So those are kind of the basics, but there's another question that a lot of churches are asking, and they're asking, okay, should we get a projector or should we use a television? And the first answer is you should not use a standard definition television. Now they're harder and harder to find. They don't sell them new anymore, but you might be tempted to just take one that someone has donated or that you were using for another purpose and repurpose this. I want to suggest that you should probably not do that for resolution's sake, because text on a computer screen will look very legible and beautiful, and then you throw it up on a standard definition television, which you can do using a scan converter. But again, you're going to lose a lot of information, and all of a sudden you can't read the text anymore. So that's why I would strongly urge you not to use a standard definition television. But an HD TV, especially a 1080p or greater television, we're starting to see 4K televisions. A 4K television would be better in smaller spaces. I really, occasionally I'll hear a church that says, yeah, we got 200 seats, so we're going to go with a 40-inch LED TV. nope, that's way too small. It won't do what you're needing. You're trying to get by, I get that, but you really need a lot more real estate in a room that even only holds 200 people. You need a lot more screen real estate or a lot more screens. So you can get by with this by bringing the screens much closer to the people, but that's going to mess with your sight lines. So keep that in mind as a downside of going with a television. In a small room like a boardroom or a classroom, a lot of times they're pretty good. The only downside is LCD televisions. Sometimes they're backlit by LEDs. Sometimes it's actually a cathode ray technology, but those can be shiny, and depending on the lighting situation, you could kind of send some glare directly into the audience eyes, or you can send glare directly into the presenter's eyes. So I just would be careful about the shinier displays. But size-wise, they're fine. Now, for most medium-sized churches, so I'm talking even up to a couple of thousand seats, projectors are the way to go. Projectors are much less inexpensive than the other technology I'm about to talk about, even though you have to change the lamps from time to time, and those lamps are ridiculously, I use that word on purpose, ridiculously expensive. The raw materials for a new lamp are just a few dollars, but because each projector is made special and each lamp is specially made, they charge hundreds of dollars for these things, sometimes thousands, depending on what you're dealing with. So that is a downside of using projectors. There are LED projectors that use LEDs, but they tend to be dimmer and better for smaller spaces. If you're going to illuminate a 40-foot screen, you're going to need the old-fashioned hot burning bulb projector. So that's kind of the in-between solution. If you're going to do this outside, which I know sometimes there are festivals and such like that during the day. Now, at night you can project, but during the day the sun is so much brighter than a projector can project. The only real solution is LEDs. Now, there's two reasons why LEDs are reserved for either outside or for very large venues with multiple thousands of people. First, each pixel on an LED tends to be, on an LED screen, tends to be 3 LEDs. A red LED, a green LED, and a blue LED. When they're all turned on full brightness, our eyes see that as white. And then you dim them in basically different configurations to change the colors. You turn off all but the red, and it's red. You turn off all but the blue, and it's blue. You turn off all but the green, and it's green. You get the point. You combine those in whatever manner. So you need a lot of those bad boys in order to make a high definition screen. You need, 1920 by 1080. So 1,920 of them width-wise by 1,080 of them height-wise in order to be high definition. And if each of your LEDs is, if each of your LED pixels, which is made up of 3 LEDs, is the size of the end of your pinky finger, you can imagine just how huge this sucker needs to be. Now, they make them with smaller LEDs, but those tend to be more expensive. So it really can get a bit crazy price-wise, because you're looking at basically 3 million LEDs to make a high-definition set, if my math might be wrong on that. So, but the blacks are black because you just turn off all the LEDs. There's no light, therefore it's black. The whites are bright because you're turning on 3 LEDs and therefore it's bright. But as I said, you need a lot of space to get high definition, and they're very expensive. So these would be reserved for the largest of the churches. I have someone in the chat room, and so I'm going to ask if there are any other questions. But those are kind of just some basic questions that I hear over and over again, in addition to the question of HDMI. A lot of churches try and use HDMI in production, and it really wasn't designed for that. Because of the copy protection, needing to have two-way communication, even if your signal gets to your projector, the signal needs to get back from the projector to your computer or your switcher or what have you. And if one of those two goes south, you get no signal whatsoever. Whereas in the old analog days, if your signal almost made it there with VGA, your picture would just not look as good, but it would still be there. So that's the downside of HDMI, is the copy protection makes it less reliable. So, okay, so Mwaligo. We run a gym and would like to get audio to a baby nursing room about 300 feet away. Any suggestions? Can you, in the baby nursing room, if they can hear, just not very well, you're going to want to try and get cables there. Now, what you can do is, if you amplify the signal, you can send the signal 300 feet, no problem, over just like an 18 gauge wire, 2 of them, to some speakers there. That's probably the cheapest solution, but you've got to run cable every single week, and if something goes wrong with the cable, you've got an issue. An 18.4 is what you would use if you wanted stereo. So that's the way you would do it wired. If they can't hear at all there, then maybe you'd want to do something over the network. Because the reason you don't want to do something over the network is that will create some latency. You could do something like, if you're just trying to do sound, do something like an Apple TV again, and take the sound from the soundboard, run that into like a MacBook Pro or an a Mac Mini, run that in there, and then send that over the network into an Apple TV. And that's a wireless solution that, as long as you've got a good network, and in this case it might just be a dedicated wireless network where you set up a wireless access point or a router that's encrypted, no one else is using it, make sure there are no other channels that it's interfering with, but you just set that up week in, week out, and I think that would be a good solution to get just audio there. There's actually an AirPlay audio device that you can get from Apple that will do the same thing. So there, in addition to the Apple solutions, there are also like home theater type solutions, or 300 feet is a little long for Bluetooth. I was thinking about that. So you could also do something like wireless speakers, but there's still going to be a little latency there, and you might get a little echo. So I'd be a little concerned about that. So those are just the solutions that pop into my head right now. Thanks for the question. So, how about you? Do you have any questions? Let's see here. How would we do analog audio into a MacBook or Mac Mini? We did try the wireless speakers and they were inconsistent. Okay. Latency is okay. Good deal. So, let me see if I've got my Griffin iMic here. Griffin iMic is a little... I might have put it away because I don't use it every week. A Griffin iMic is a little USB audio adapter. You would think with the name iMic that it's a microphone, but it's not. It's a USB audio adapter that will take a line level signal from, say, the tape out of your audio board or a submix out, and then you can send that out. And then there's some software, I'm blanking on the names of the pieces of software, where you can send basically any audio that you have on your MacBook Pro via, you can send that over the network to an Apple TV located in the in this nursing room. So that's what I think that's probably your simplest solution. You're probably talking in the neighborhood of a $200 fix, and you could set that up where it's plug on one end, plug on the other end, and you're done, as opposed to running wire, which could be a little annoying every week to run it, tape it down, and then after church rip it up and hope that you haven't damaged the cable in the meantime. So, good questions. Feel free to ask those anytime, those kinds of questions, because those are the kinds of questions that I'm happy to specialize in. So, if you've enjoyed this show, make sure that you share it with other people. If you like this video, make sure you like it on YouTube, or don't forget to subscribe, where you'll get all these questions and answers on a weekly basis without doing anything, and it's free. The best way that you can help out is to recommend us to other people in tech ministry or other churches, and I just hope that all this information has helped you to go out and change eternity. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford with TrinityDigitalMedia.com.